Greetings, YouTubers and fellow Star Wars fans out there. Today I'm going to review the Star Wars anthology movie, Rogue One. And if you haven't gone into the theaters yet, that is basically the only title of the film. Just those two words, Rogue One. There is no titles. There is no opening three-paragraph sequence like in most of them. There's just an opening sequence to where you see her, Jin's parents get killed by the Empire. She somehow escapes, but they don't show that part. And then it shows the movie's title, which is just Rogue One. It doesn't say Star Wars, or it doesn't say a Star Wars story. It just says Rogue One. Which is almost kind of justifiable considering the fact that it doesn't really feel like a Star Wars movie for the first two acts of the film. It really doesn't, it really isn't until Act 3, the final one, the one that everybody likes, that that actually does feel like a hardcore Star Wars film, and actually a good one, not an actual hardcore Star Wars film, and actually a pretty decent effects one at that. But yeah, 67% of the film doesn't really feel like a Star Wars movie, in my opinion. Well, I guess what I should say off is that, first off, Jin, the character, it's pretty obvious that she is the main character. Like, they tried making it a team movie at some points, but she never veers away from the spotlight. They might shed a few light on some of the other characters, but they never really shed away from Jin's character at all. With that being said, I found Jin's character to be extremely obnoxious. I felt the need to jump inside the movie and just beat the living fuck out of her. Just not a very likable character, and if that was what they were going for, they did a good job, but I don't think it's a good job if your main character is very unlikable to the point that most of at least that I couldn't really stand her as a person. I thought she was too much of a smart aleck bitch, in my opinion, but then again, I'm a guy, and Kathleen, I'm a guy, she's not, so maybe I'm just being a sexist motherfucker, like I was when I said I thought Rey was a little too overpowered in Episode 7. I guess only women can say that. But, I did like the droid. I hated the fact that they didn't say, I've got a bad feeling about this. They interrupted him as a muse for a comedy, as a way of comedy, which really pissed me off. If you're going to be true to the Star Wars fans, say the line that every Star Wars movie is kind of supposed to say. Don't cut the person off and just make it a comical relief, because that just pissed me off. Another thing is that I managed to not look at my watch the whole movie, which is not something anybody that's seen a Star Wars movie should say, especially somebody that grew up watching Star Wars since they were 2 years old, if not younger. Yeah, I was sitting in the theaters, and it felt like for the first 15 minutes, just taking a guess, that I felt the urge to check my watch constantly. Another thing is that this movie's supposed to answer the plot hole about how an exhaust pipe, can blow up an entire Death Star. A lot of people already made up a scientific answer before that, so that didn't bother me. What did bother me would have been how the rebels figured this out so quickly, until I just came up with the assumption well, they have very advanced technology. So it's pretty easy for them back then to, find such data that quickly. Not to mention, you don't really see them find the data, you just see them put the plans inside the chip, and then they'll have the meeting about it. So who knows how much time went through. So I guess what I consider to be the plot hole pretty much could have been answered just by just question, it pretty much could have just been answered by the atmosphere around it, to where you could just pretty much guess the answer itself. And unfortunately with Rogue One, okay, it was pretty interesting how you answered that plot hole, even though it wasn't that bad of a plot hole. I've grown up around Star Wars fans, and A New Hope is 39 years old now? Didn't really hear anybody make that big of a deal about that being a plot hole. If anything, I think them trying to solve said plot hole in this movie actually created more plot holes. It's because, well, A, he's told that he's a bad liar, and then he says that he taught himself how to lie. To where somehow, while he's making the Death Star and designing it and all that, somehow he's the only one out of all these years of the Death Star being constructed, he's somehow the only one that noticed said, I guess, flaw in the system. Whereas all the construction workers or all the imperialists around him somehow didn't really catch that this was what he was probably doing. Not only that, he's able to say all this through a message while he's being captive in an imperial base. And somehow, with all this unlimited data and all this resources to basically owning the whole empire, you know, they're not once able to detect, or they're somehow able to make this message go unnoticed or untraceable for that matter, to where, you know, the chicken's throwing me off, sorry. But he's basically inside an imperial base, and he's sending this message, and at no point is the message tracked down or discovered while he's held in captivity. That seems more like a plot hole to me than how they find the plans for the Death Star, or how they find this flaw with the Death Star. You know, so them trying to solve said plot hole created another plot hole, in my opinion. Or created two plot holes, in my opinion. One, how did nobody else notice? And B, how was the message able to get through when he's under captivity? Two plot holes when they were trying to just answer one. They should have just let that one go, because again, I think a lot of people were okay with that plot hole, let alone some people didn't really consider it a plot hole to begin with. Another thing is Vader. First off, he's in two scenes, not one. The second scene that he's in, badass. Really cool, and they did it in a great way to where it doesn't seem like he should be that badass in episode 4, 5, or 6, especially because he's only in episode 4 for 12 minutes. And it makes sense because he's needing all those people alive to see where they had the plans. Whereas he's trying to stop said plans from going away, so it makes sense that he's killing all these motherfuckers. Scene 1, however, you can tell Disney was in control with scene 1 of Vader. First off, we all know Vader is inside his suit because he got burned alive. So why is his castle... Yes, and Vader has a castle, which I guess that wouldn't be that much of a problem, wasn't the location. Why is his castle located on a volcanic planet? Okay, if lava is the very thing that got him to his weakness and his demise right now, why would he have a layer built around said environment? That just wouldn't make any sense to me. Another thing is, if you're able to bring in a CGI Princess Leia and a CGI General Tarkin, a character whose actor has been dead for 22 years, how do you guys manage to fuck up Vader's voice to where, in my opinion, it sounds completely old and completely raunchy? Or, lack of a better term, raunchy. And yes, I'm aware James Earl Jones is not as young as he used to be. But again, they just brought to life a character through 3GI that's been dead for over 20 years. You think they'd be able to up the ante on his voice. The only episode where it would make sense that his voice wouldn't be... where his voice would sound crispy and just, I don't know, just flat out old or just distraughted, would be episode 3 when he just now got on the suit after just coming from said burns. Not 19 years later. And another thing, this is another thing that made it seem like it was definitely a Disney movie, is he seemed like a Marvel villain for a second when he threw in a pun saying, "Don't choke on your ambitions," while he's choking somebody. That just seemed too much like a Marvel Cinematic Universe villain to me. I could have gone without that corny dialogue. It It's just as bad as them interrupting the droid from saying, I have a bad feeling about this. It was just as bad, in my opinion, with them doing that. So, I don't know, just the location where Vader was, the voice of Vader, was kind of carried out through the whole film. But the second scene that he's in is so badass, you're almost like, okay, I'll give it a pass. Not so much in the first scene. And then you just have him making a bad joke. I've never seen Vader in all the 6 Star Wars films that I've seen of him make a joke about choking somebody. The closest you got was him saying, I find your lack of faith disturbing, which was badass and was cool. And it definitely showed how down to earth, or not really down, just how corrupt and evil this character was. And just how he didn't give a fuck. This one, he's trying to add humor to a subject that doesn't really need humor touched on. It was definitely Disney trying to bring in their Marvel Cinematic Universe into Star Wars, which, if I wanted that, I would have just waited the 20 more years for Kingdom Hearts 3 to come out, because they're designing said Star Wars and Marvel characters together. Make it to where that has that bad pun in it, not to where something that's actually supposed to be canonical to Star Wars has that pun to it. Speaking of puns, I'd have to say again, if I didn't say this already, I'd say the droid was probably my favorite character. He was a smart ass in all the right ways, and that's when all the feminists come attack, and he's like, well, if you thought he was a great smart ass, how can you didn't think Jen was a great smart ass? Well, because Jen was an obnoxious bitch that thinks she had control over everything. He knew where his place in life was. I guess with that being said, not a great film. I actually think it's way worse than The Phantom Menace. The sad part is this is coming from a guy that actually likes the prequels, and the only reason why I would say Phantom Menace would be my least favorite, and this is me counting the first 6 Star Wars, would be my least favorite Star Wars movie for the Lucas era, is because all the other ones are just slightly better. Or not even slightly, the other ones are just slightly to way better than The Phantom Menace. But you still got that slightly in there. Whereas Rogue One is an inch better than Episode 7, which is hands down my least favorite Star Wars movie. But yeah, Rogue One, with everything I just said, that's basically all the huge problems I had with the movie that I can think of. I did like the Easter eggs that it had to the original trilogy. I did like how how the final act was just completely badass, but unfortunately it wasn't enough to save for the first two acts. I did like how it did tie with A New Hope, but not enough to the point that I would rewatch Rogue One. I just watch A New Hope again like I did for the past other 22 years I've seen the movie. Not only that, if I ever do feel the need to connect Rogue One with A New Hope, I'll just think of the connections, or I'll just ignore them like I did again for the past 22 years. So it was a very useless movie for me. But it was somewhat more entertaining than Episode 7, which was just a very bad reboot to A New Hope. So with that being said, I would have to give Rogue One 5 out of 10, maybe 4 out of 10 if that. 2.5 out of 5 stars. And again, just slightly better than The Force Awakens, but not nearly as good as any of the 6 Star Wars movies that Lucas made. Which kind of reassures me that Lucas is the only one that really knows how to make a good Star Wars movie still. I'm hanging on to Episode 8, but if Episode 8 doesn't do as good as I want it to, or just as good for that matter, I'll probably be just as enthusiastic with that review as I am with this one and any of the other future Star Wars movies in the future. It'll probably get to the point that after Episode 9, I just won't even see another Star Wars movie in theaters. I'll just wait till it's rented on Redbox or Hulu or Netflix or Blockbuster or anything for that matter. But anyway, that is my review of Rogue One. Not even called Rogue One a Star Wars story, because that's not what the theaters called it, or at least that's not what the movie itself called it. But anyway, not a good movie in my opinion. Not enough to rewatch it, just enough to watch it once. If you're a Star Wars fan and you haven't seen it, I encourage you to at least watch it that one time, and it's up to you if you really want to rewatch it after that. But that's my opinion of the movie. That's my review. Thank you for watching the 15 and a half minutes of this. I hope to see you next year with episode 8, and I hope to be a lot more enthusiastic than I am about than I am with this than I am for this review. But I guess we'll find that out within a year or so. So with that being said, I guess may the Force be with you, and peace out, and have a good one. Thanks for watching.